Can you hear me well? Oh, fantastic. Welcome to ETCC. Do you have your sun cream, swim bath as well? Well, it's a beautiful day in Cannes. And I'm Laszlo Szabo, the co-founder and CEO of Kiln, one of the leading on-chain yield platform serving hundreds of institutions. In fact, we were the largest Ethereum validator provider last year, owning and running a little bit more than 6% of the network. But today, I'm going to talk about something we've been working for months, for nearly 2 years now, RareNet. Woo! RareNet, as we call it, the Aladdin moment for on-chain assets. Aladdin refers to BlackRock Aladdin, but we can also call it the open connectivity layer between DeFi and real-world assets. So there's a couple of observations we did and we made in the yield space, in the crypto space. So first of all, I think we all agree at this stage that institutions are coming on-chain and they're moving stuff, they're tokenizing stuff. It all started, in our view, with these large asset managers, BlackRock and Franklin Templeton as a good example, that launched ETF in January 2024. Bitcoin ETF, then Ethereum ETFs, was a huge success. Then they started to tokenize their assets. Money market fund tokenized. There was a case of BlackRock with BUIDL. There was a case of Franklin Templeton with Benji. But what they will do in the coming months, in the coming years, which is much more transformational for them, is essentially replicating what they've been doing off-chain for years, off-chain asset management, but on-chain through vaults. And that's quite exciting. The other observation we did is in the crypto space, the yield opportunity sits more and more into stablecoins and also into Bitcoin. A bit less into stakeable assets, with Ethereum leading the pack, because it starts to be a very mature ecosystem where stakeable assets, proof-of-stake blockchain, native assets of proof-of-stake blockchain are in majority staked. More than 50% of them are staked. When in the case of Ethereum, it's more than 30%. But when it comes to stablecoin, only 15%, 1/5 of these stablecoins are bearing interest. And you can see a future where a majority of these stablecoins are bearing interest while you pay, you earn, you receive, you earn, and it all happens at the speed of blockchains. Bitcoin only bear interest to 1.6% of the time. And the reason that is multiple. First of all, it's not natively yielding assets as opposed to Ethereum and Ether. Second, you had yield on Bitcoin pre-FTX with centralized lending desk and Genesis, which kind of evaporated after FTX. You also had this narrative of Bitcoin staking, folks that were trying to make Bitcoin stakeable, but that's also evaporated. But now what you're going to start to see is Bitcoin being bridged, being wrapped, and the value of Bitcoin being deployed into DeFi and real-world assets on Ethereum M1 and L2s. But today's DeFi yields, when it comes to yields through vaults, through curators, as they call themselves, is mostly similar, where they borrow an asset, let's say stablecoin with wrapped Bitcoin or Ethereum as a collateral. They loop it 1 to 2, 3 times, and the protocol farm it, launch incentivized program that generates the yield. This is not really sustainable because in a bull market, the yields are high. The borrow interest is important. But in the bear market, well, you start to see these yields completely fading. And same for the farming programs. These token incentives only last a couple of months because these token cannot, this DeFi protocol cannot print money indefinitely. So what if we applied traditional asset management on-chain? So that instead of borrowing, looping, farming, generating the yields, you could take the capital allocate into various DeFi protocols, but also scalable real-world assets, money market fund, private credit fund, stocks and commodities, manage the risk, and optimize returns. Unfortunately, the current standards in the Ethereum ecosystem are not really meant and built for that world. 4626 standards, which is the most adopted vault standard in DeFi today, is really done for synchronous DeFi, so that you can create lending vaults, lending pools, so that 4626 works very well when you can go in and out in a purely liquid way. But that doesn't work with real-world assets because most of the time these RWAs have KYC requirements off-chain as well as redemption times. A money market fund is 1 to 2 days, private credit fund is 30 days, private equity funds is a couple of years. 7540 tries to address that by including a pending state. You stake into a vault, if you allocate into real assets, there's a pending state. But the problem of this pending state is it's not rejected if the KYC doesn't go through off-chain, for example, or you don't see how long you're going to be waiting for that real asset to be liquid off-chain. So there's a missing layer, a connectivity layer that brings these two positions in DeFi, the synchronous one, so that you can allocate into liquid DeFi, and the asynchronous ones, where you can allocate to real assets and see what's happening off-chain through smart contracts. This is why we introduced RailNet. Woo! Come on. Well, RailNet is the orchestration layer for on-chain asset managers to build strategies combining liquid positions in DeFi, lending, liquidity providing, perp stacks, and real-world assets, whatever the real-world asset is, and distribute them anywhere. So how does it work? At core, it's a new standard, an on-chain yield state machine that we call STEAM, the State Transition Engine for asset management, which will decompose any flows, regardless if it's a DeFi flow or if it's a real asset flow. When it comes to real assets, in that case, BUIDL, there will be a deposit, a pending time, which can be rejected if the KYC didn't go through. And it will tell you, well, as an asset manager, you have allocated your funds, USDC, into BUIDL, and this asset is still unliquid for the next 24 hours. And you see that clock through the smart contract. It enables an asset manager to essentially stagger a lot of positions, liquid and liquid, inside the same vault, and through a queue system to stagger as well the deposit and redemption times of these positions. And you see all of that on-chain. The NAV is calculated on-chain, and there's no logic that is pushed off-chain. It's also an ecosystem. So on top set of smart contracts, the yield layer, which, by the way, it's, we will most probably launch it as an EIP, so anyone can build their standard, their adapter using the Steam standards, so that they can plug to either DeFi protocol or their assets that they're tokenizing. Then there's the OmniVault, which essentially assemble all of these queries and build an on-chain portfolio strategies composed of DeFi and real assets. And on top, the integration layer for platforms so that they can offer these yields to their customers. There's also the compliance system built in, KYT and KYC, so you can essentially address the KYT and KYC needs according to geographies, jurisdictions, as precise as states in the US. You can say, well, I want to give access to my product to 45 states and not these 5 specific states. And lastly, what is very important in DeFi is to understand the risk. And I'll talk about it later. But we provide risk data room to grade the different layers of the strategies. So that's how we think of compliance, right? A big word. But for wallet, usually you will use a complete KYT flow. You don't need KYC. You don't want KYC because it breaks the staking flow. If you ask, you're on Ledger, if you're on Safe, and you start, we start to ask you KYC if you want to allocate funds into a vault and in yield product, you might just lose the user. But you need a KYT flow end-to-end, ensuring there's no flagged fund in the vault and no flagged funds in where the assets are allocated in these DeFi protocols or real assets. Then there's a semi-permission flow for an exchange where you want to make sure all of the funds in the vault are KYC'd. And it can be linked to a KYC user of an exchange. But at least the asset manager, when receive the funds, can deploy into permissionless DeFi and permissionless real assets. And for large institutions, regulated institutions that want only to touch KYC flow in DeFi, you can have KYC at the entry in the vault and at the deployment, with asset managers only deploying into KYC pools in DeFi or KYC real assets. The risk data room. So we will tell you, our head of asset management was the ex-CEO of Corredor, the first yield rating mechanism in DeFi and in vaults. We'll tell you what is the quality of a collateral, what is the quality of a certain assets, what is the quality of a DeFi protocols, the risk, the audits, the liquidity risk of the overall strategies through that data rooms. You don't have to trust us. Most of the time, the asset manager plugged their own assumption. You can tweak this assumption, thinking, well, we have been overly bullish or bearish on a particular type of risk. So that you can think of DeFi risks that are complex, that are multi-layer, as close to the TradFi standards. So we announced our first product with Monarch, the asset management arm of FalconX, so that they can take Bitcoin or Ethereum or stablecoin as an entry. When it comes to Bitcoin, they've wrapped it, and then they will deploy into various DeFi protocols, funding arbitrage strategies on chain, and real asset strategies, tokenized treasury and private credit, which makes the strategy quite sustainable regardless of market cycles. We've also announced 2 weeks ago our partnership with CoinShares, the largest European crypto asset manager, MiCA regulated, also US regulated, so that they using RailNet essentially to offer stablecoin strategies across DeFi lending protocols, as well as private credits and stocks and commodities inside the same on-chain portfolio. Well, you're going to be able to see these products, and these tier one asset managers will announce more in the future from your favorite interface. That's what we've been doing in staking for years, is making sure these platforms, these wallets, these exchanges, these custodians can collaborate with us, have the right set of APIs, and offer the best yield product to their users. So you will be able to access these DeFi to real assets on-chain strategies from your favorite interface. Thank you very much. If you're a builder and you want to build on RailNet, you want to build adapters according to the standards. If you're an asset manager, you want to build strategies. If you're a fund allocator, you want to allocate funds, or a platform want to offer these strategies to your users, I'm happy to chat, and have a great ETHCC.